It's more than 7 months since Hamas gunmen broke through the perimeter fence from Gaza into Israel, launching attacks that killed over 1,000 people. More than 250 were taken hostage. The events on the 7th of October sparked a brutal war in Gaza. The Hamas-run health ministry says more than 35,000 Palestinians have been killed. Most of Gaza's population has been displaced by the fighting. Around the world, there remain regular calls for peace. In the Middle East, those conversations are always particularly difficult, but two men with very different backgrounds and experiences have come together to try to effect change. And I'm delighted to say that both of them join us on the programme now. Magen Inon is an Israeli peace activist. His parents were both killed on the 7th of October when their house was hit by a Hamas rocket. And Hamze Awawde is a Palestinian peace activist from the West Bank whose grandfather was killed trying to recover his lands that were taken in 1948. Thank you both. I know that you have a regular and an ongoing dialogue now. You go to events together, you speak together. But I'd like to start, before we talk about that, with your own personal experiences, if we may. And Magen, tell me first of all about what happened to your parents on the 7th of October.
So very briefly, the community where I grew up is the Israeli village that's closest to the Gaza border. It's called Netiva Asara. On October 7th, Hamas terrorists use motorized parachutes to fly over the very high wall between the village and the Gaza Strip, and they, within an hour, managed to kill 20 people in the community. And one of the terrorists was killed at the spot, and the others escaped. And among the 20 people in the community, my parents' house was completely burned down, and my parents didn't survive the attack.
As you were talking there, Magen, we were seeing, and we can see on screen now, pictures of your parents smiling and happy. And I know that for you and for so many other people in Israel, the 7th of October was an enormously difficult time. And thank you for sharing those details with us. And Hamze, tell us a little more about your grandfather and his experience during the Nakba.
Yeah, so my grandfather was a shepherd. He lived in the Hebron area, but had his land in what's today called Kiryat Gad. After the occupation, he turned from a shepherd to freedom fighter, as he describes himself, and he was killed eventually. My uncles, everyone in my family has been involved at some point. But we reached understanding that we don't have to engage in this to get what we really worth, freedom and liberty and, our existence in that land.
As we said right at the start, you both obviously have incredibly emotional and difficult experiences to reflect on, which I think makes the friendship and the relationship between the two of you and what you're doing now particularly notable. Magen, tell me, if you would, about where and when you two first met and how you struck up a conversation.
So I've been quite vocal in the media following the murder of my parents. I live here in the UK, and my family has been quite vocal in Israel. And what the basic thing we're calling for is, just like Hamze said, we have a vision for the future where the two nations live together, and we wanted to share that as our parents' legacy. And so when I was writing in the media, speaking in the media here, I was approached by a few organizations, and we organized a vigil in Westminster with thousands of people attending. And the idea was to bring people from across the divide, without slogans, without flags, just sharing our common humanity, sharing our pain, and providing some hope for the future. And just before I went on stage, I saw Hamze standing next to me, and he was supposed to speak after me. And immediately we exchanged a few words and said, let's go on together. And I think that was a very powerful image, and I still hear. Like yesterday, someone told me that he was there crying when he saw us on stage together. And I think that's sharing our pain, but also providing a vision for a better future. This is what we've been doing since. and we're very much aligned on those values.
It's enormously powerful. We're just looking at a picture of you both on stage together. And Hamze, in that first conversation, and as Magen was saying there, it was a short conversation. You made that decision to go on together quite quickly. How did you feel at that moment? What emotions, what thoughts were going through your mind?
It's not difficult for me to stand with someone who share with me the same values and the same vision for the future. I know it's controversial, especially at that time the war was still at the beginning. But we have to demonstrate different example. We have to do it. If we don't do it ourselves, who will do it? And we want to see more examples like me and Magen. We had to break that, that barrier. And it really came natural because I never doubted what Magen stands for. Even though he's Israeli and I'm Palestinian, our future is together. And maybe our past is different. And we have to be the change we want to see in this world. So I did it. It was not easy, but I never regretted it. And I know many other people felt more comfortable to do the same afterwards.
I think the fact, Magen, that you're not just talking about the change. Both of you are actually living that change. And those pictures we were seeing of you both in different places, on stage, on the tube together. How do people react? How do the audience react? What kind of feelings and feedback do you get from them?
So just to provide a few more details, we went into schools with an organization called Solutions Not Sides. I spoke to maybe 1,000 students over a week, and that was very important and meaningful for me, but I believe also for the students. And with Together for Humanity, that's a campaign where we did some work in universities and continuing that work. And this Thursday, we're going to have a large event in King's College. We're trying to build those spaces where people can say, we recognize the pain, we recognize the horrible things that are happening in Gaza, the horrible things that happened on October 7th in Israel. And while recognizing the pain on both sides, we are able to provide a vision for the future. And, some people might call us naive. I think we're the pragmatists. I think there's two narratives in the region that are very extreme. Hamas is trying to sell an illusion that violence can somehow succeed. And the extreme right in Israel is selling a very similar vision that violence can succeed. Ultimately, those are illusions. And so we're trying to be the pragmatists who are offering a different future, a different vision. And definitely for Israel, Palestine, but also for people here in the communities in the UK, where they can hopefully they can join in our vision rather than choosing one of those illusions.
Hamze, how do you deal with those frank conversations, which I know you've had, and you won't agree on anything, and often they are the things that stop dialogue altogether. So how do the two of you actually talk through those things?
I think it starts by recognizing that people have pain, and people, whatever they say, it's really important for them. They might lack some information, they might be brainwashed, but to come with really open-mindedness, and we often, Magen and I tell the students that there's nothing they can say can offend us, because we're really interested in the conversation. It's not about us, it's about everybody, it's about our future. I have never said no to any conversation, because we need to change people who disagree with us, not the people that already think like us. When I am just purely attacked, I try to avoid these negative provocations. But when somebody is genuinely interested to learn, or even just to share, I'm always here to listen.
And Magen, again, we were just reflecting there on the fact that so often these conversations that you're having, they are conversations that don't even begin. They don't even start. What do you say to people to try and provoke that dialogue, to try and just get people to be in the same space and to start having those conversations?
I think, those people who don't want to engage, they might be fearful of making a mistake or getting criticized. We have to realize that if we're not stepping into those spaces, others will. And currently those spaces are occupied by the extremists. And so we have to find a moderate voice and create those spaces where people feel safe to have difficult conversations and real conversations, not plastering as if there's nothing wrong. Real difficult conversations, but in a safe space, otherwise, and a space where is respectful and we can recognize each other as human beings rather than try and scream at one another and trying to win the argument. So really, I'm inviting people, listeners, viewers, to invite people like me and Hamze to those spaces and have those conversations, because we're getting amazing feedbacks from people who are, suddenly saying, finally we can talk about this in a nuanced and the complex way the reality really is, rather than screaming a slogan that we don't believe in.
Hamze, we've only got about a minute left, but tell me, do you feel, from what you've done so far, do you feel that you are making a difference, the two of you?
Absolutely. The kids have been really very interested, and they got to learn something new that they don't see in the media or even in their society. And the hope is in these young people.
Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. It's an absolutely fascinating conversation and an extraordinary thing that you're doing at Hamze Awawde and Magen Inon. Thank you so much for joining us here on BBC News. I just want to